I had a joke I was going to use at the start of this video about Fushigi no Yume no Alice being the only PC Engine game based on classic literature, but we've already had a few games based on classic Asian literature, so maybe it's the only game based on 19th century British novels? And no, there's actually 2 of those coming up. So let's just say that Fushigi no Yume no Alice is the only platformer based on a Victorian novel. If you just keep slicing things finer, then eventually you find it. In case you couldn't tell, Fushigi no Yume no Alice is loosely based on Alice's adventures in Wonderland, except a bunch of other fairy tale stuff is crammed in there. What are you even doing here, Pinocchio? This game is set in 1865, your book hasn't been written yet. The plot of the game is that Alice was a girl living in a fairy tale kingdom, and one night a monster came out of a book and entered her dreams. The monster was being chased by a white rabbit, and the rabbit needs Alice's help to stop the monster that's now residing inside her head. I feel like this plot's way more complicated than it needs to be. This is a platforming game consisting of 11 stages. Those 11 stages are divided up among 3 worlds, with the first 3 worlds having 3 stages each, and then the last 2 worlds being all on their own. Button 1 jumps, and Button 2 makes Alice yell. She is just going, "Yeah," when she attacks. You can hold down Button 2 to charge up the power of that shout, but generally speaking, shouting is the weaker option for you. Alice is way more effective when she stomps on enemies by jumping on them. A level 3 charged shout is not as strong as a jump on the head. And adding to that, if you hold a charge for too long, the meter at the bottom of the screen will start blinking, and a few seconds later Alice will have to take a break. She'll just stop in place and you can't do anything. At the end of every level is a boss, and you'll want to jump on their heads too. A useful thing to keep in mind as you're running around is that you can jump on just about anything. Someone attacks you, jump on their arrows. They're dropping bombs, jump on those and knock them back at them. Even if the bombs are spiky sea urchins, you can do that. Everybody gets hurt by the explosions from bombs, and that makes knocking those around a useful strategy. All of that would make Fushigi no Yume no Alice a very simple, very straightforward platforming game. But there's one more game system, and it makes things a bit complicated. You see, Alice has magic power, as you might have guessed from the bar at the bottom of the screen. To activate these powers, you pause the game by hitting run, and then press button 1 to open up a menu. You start out with just one ability, and every time you clear a world, you gain an additional one. Alice begins with the search ability. This changes the color of the screen, and it reveals hidden power-ups. Without the search ability, the only item that you'll find to collect are the very, very occasional hearts to recover 1 point of health. And all of the power-ups you collect are temporary. They go away when you complete the stage. What this means is that you're going to want to walk around with search magic active as much as possible. Search costs 1 magic point to use, and you're going to have to really hustle if you want to search an entire stage without running out of magic. You can find little hands that will restore 1 point of the magic bar, and a book that will refill the magic bar to full and extend its length by 1. Similarly, the big heart will refill you to full health and extend that bar by 1. The other significant power-up that you can find is a big "yeah," and that increases the maximum charge gauge for Alice's shout. At 4 bars, it is as strong as jumping on top of someone, so finding that is very useful. Later magic that you can acquire will give Alice a bigger jump for a short time, damage all enemies on the screen, and make her invincible. The later magic also uses up more energy. Something that you might have noticed if you've been paying really close attention to this video is that a lot of the areas look the same. This is because I could only get to the 6th level. In other words, I couldn't complete World 2. Fushigi no Yume no Alice is a notoriously difficult game. Initially, you'll be challenged by respawning enemies that do things like launch 1 extra attack on death that goes in a different direction. And once you've gotten okay at that, you'll have to do precision jumping over holes. And then you might need to bounce on enemies to clear gaps, even though bouncing doesn't really get you any extra height. Meanwhile, the boss attack patterns are a little bit more complicated than you might expect. and later on in the game they become downright nasty, next to undodgeable unless you know exactly what you're doing. In fact, the extreme difficulty is pretty much the only thing that Fushigi no Yume no Alice is known for in Japan. It's just not an especially notable or popular game. My own feeling is I kinda liked it, but I would also totally get why someone wouldn't. This is a real tough but fair kind of challenge. Now, I think the game would work better without the magic system. You're going to have to run around with search on for your first pass through an area, then come back and use the ability strategically to get the items that you need. The limited number of continues means you're going to be restarting this one fairly often, but the stages are short enough that once you know what you're doing, you can zip through pretty quickly. This is a very simple, straightforward game, but it's well executed. Okay, I'd also prefer that they'd use a different jumping animation than that. The one they used is a real choice.